Now let's go over how to find and hire a property manager. So, a property manager can make or break your business. If you have a good deal with a bad property manager, it's a bad deal. If you have a bad deal with a good property manager, it can become a good deal. So, I want to go over, why you need a property manager, how to find the property manager, what questions to go over when you interview them. And this is a very important lecture because I literally chose my market only because I knew I had a really good property manager there. So that shifted me over to that market. Like people ask me like, why Oklahoma? I had a really good property manager there. That's exactly why. And it's as simple as that, right? Like don't overcomplicate things. Like if you have a team there already, then just build around that team. It's not rocket scientists. It's not rocket science. And I hope you can, watch this lecture a few times and pick up some nuggets here. But it's not too difficult to find and hire a property manager. It's difficult to find a good one. So hopefully this gives you some insight. So, well, why do you need a property manager? You know, it allows you to massively scale instead of focusing on the day-to-day operations of a apartment complex. Like, you don't know how many maintenance calls, a 50 unit apartment complex will have. You're renovating units, uh, turning units, showing tenants the units. It's a lot of work. And, if you self-manage it, it requires you to be on call 24/7, and it's not fun. Like as a real estate investor, we don't buy real estate to buy more work, but we're trying to buy back our time. Like for me, I want to retire from my day job, but that's not possible if I'm not able to scale. And even let's just say I did own enough apartments, but I'm self-managing it. I'd be honest, I'd rather have my day job versus be a property manager. So you definitely need a property manager. If you find a golden property manager, treat them like gold. And the property managers have a system in place, right? They'll pick up and deposit rents, take any maintenance and repair requests, they'll evict the tenants, they'll show units and rent them out, and they'll help you renovate the units as well. So, it's a hard job, and unfortunately 9 out of 10 are no good. But once you found that one good one, you can scale. Like because I have a property manager, I'm able to own 86 units that are heavy value add, and I'm still working a full-time W-2. Like people ask me like, how do you have a life? And I have a life because I have a good property manager. So once you have that good property manager, you just can kind of kick back and relax. And like once my apartment's stabilized in 2 to 3 years after renovations are done, at this point it's just mailbox money, right? They just do routine stuff, show the units, collect rents, and that's it. It's very passive, and that's the ultimate goal. Like I want to buy back my time so that I can spend more time with my friends, my family, and not be tied to a W-2 job. And that's ultimate. That's my why, right? That's my why and why I'm buying real estate, and it's very strong. So that's what's keeping me motivated to build a real estate portfolio. And a key member is the property manager. So, property managers make or break your deal. They're managing your assets. So the way I view property managers is, like, when I bought my 26 unit apartment complex, I had to down, like 100,000. So imagine you're giving your property manager $100,000 to manage, and like, do you trust them with that $100,000? And if they make the property fail, you'll lose your down payment. Plus, like, you still have a loan, right? So imagine you're giving someone like $1 million and how they treat that. That's how you should view your property manager. And just to reiterate this point, if you have a good property manager and a bad deal, it can become a good deal. Like they can turn the deal around, manage it better, collect the rents, choose better tenants, take care of all the maintenance issues. So, they really make or break your deal. If you have a bad property manager, a good deal, they'll ruin your deal. I've seen that happen so many times. You bought a good turnkey asset, and when the property manager took over, it started to decline significantly. And word of caution is 9 out of 10 property managers are bad. And during the interview, unfortunately, it's hard to identify. But once you found that 1 out of 10, treat them like gold, and make it known that you want to scale around them. So they make money off a percentage. So the more units they have under management, the more money they make. So just make it known, and it takes on average 3 to 6 months to know if a property manager is good or bad. So that's the hard part about this business. So they always want to sign you to a 1 year contract, but you always try to negotiate down to 6 months. And this is the reason, right? So it's kind of like a probationary period to see if they're good or not, and that's how you know. So the best way to get property managers is through referrals from other investors. So I had another investor that I was friends with, and he actually used a property manager that I'm using, and he kind of shared with me like how they managed his apartment complex, and they helped him renovate it, and they got the rents to where they said, and the renovations was cheap, and they were just low stress, low headache. And that's very meaningful, right? Because they're managing his asset, so they have a track record. And this is the best way to weed out the bad property managers. But don't get me wrong, even with a referral, you can still find that 9 out of 10 that are bad. So that's the best way that I'd recommend if possible. But if not, you can ask around on real estate forums, not like Bigger Pockets. Usually if you post on that forum, like in Huntsville, Alabama, they'll flock to you like weed. So that's one way. And then you don't want to make sure that your property manager specializes in apartment complexes, right? So a lot of property managers, they only do single family homes. But managing a single family home versus managing apartment complex, it's a different mentality. For single family home, it's less turnover. It's higher rents. Typically higher end tenants, and you have to worry so much about cost, right? Because the value of single family home isn't based on how much rent you get. It's based on what your neighbor's house sells for. Versus for apartment complexes, it's based on the NOI divided by the cap rate. So they have to collect the income and manage the expense. So a lot of property managers that manage single family homes, they're not good at managing expenses. Like I had a property manager with my 26 unit, and he was quoting me like sky high numbers, and I quickly found out that like he told me that they manage apartment complexes, but like his definition of apartment complex was a fourplex. And a 1 to 4 units is considered residential real estate, and 5+ is commercial or apartment complexes. So his mentality was managing single family homes, not apartments. So I knew if I use a property manager, my expense would be so high, it's going to decrease my NOI and decrease the value. So you have to find a property manager that manages apartment complexes, and ideally a medium-sized property manager, between 400 to 1,000 units, so that that they have systems in place. They're not too small, that they have systems, but they're not too big that you're just a number, right? Like if they manage like 5,000 units and you only have a 20-unit apartment complex, you're peanuts. You're small fish. Like they're not going to take you seriously. So that's why you want that sweet spot. And I do have an attachment and go over how to vet property managers. And then if all that doesn't work, then the last method is just search on Google property managers in the area, and you just start calling those companies and initiating the interview. So as a rule of thumb, which I go over, you want at least 3 property managers, right? You want to interview like whatever 10, 20, and then get your top 3, and then you need your backups, right? Because you don't know after 6 months if they're good or not. And if they don't turn out good, then you need to start preparing your number 2 property manager. And if they don't turn out, number 3. If number 3 doesn't work out, I guess start finding more. So and sometimes life happens too, right? Like the property manager might quit, they might retire, they might get injured. So you always need a bench of property managers as backup. So, I just want to highlight what the interview with the property manager will look like. And, they average 30 to 60 minutes to give you a flavor of how long it takes. And if you're interviewing 10, that's 10 hours right there, right? So, as I mentioned, you definitely want to spend the most time finding a good property manager. And once you find a good property manager, it's so easy to scale. So I know it's a lot of work up front, but once you find that golden property manager, like for me, I can scale like so much with my property manager. I could easily scale, to 1,000 units if I decide to syndicate. And it's because I have a system in place, right? And fortunately for me, I was referred a golden goose, but once you find that golden goose, it's so easy to scale. And that's the goal, right? That's the ultimate goal. So, just take your time to really interview the property managers. And remember what I said earlier, you have to spend at least 5 hours a week, on this business, on top of your W-2. For me, I spent 20 hours a week. So I basically work like 60 hours a week before my two jobs. And just keep in mind during the interviews, they're always on their best behavior. That's just the nature of the business with any interview. You want to ask situational questions like, how do you handle a tenant who isn't paying rent on time? You just want to see their process. For example, they might be, oh, on the lease, they have to the 5th every month to pay. Beyond the 5th, it's a late fee. On the 7th, I'll issue a 7-day notice, and then on the 15th, I'll start the eviction process. So you just want to gauge what their process is. And then, you want to, because, income's important, right? You want to make sure they're collecting the rent and the income. And then next is how do you handle a tenant who is constantly making small repair requests? Like in real estate apartments, you're always going to come across these types of tenants. And, all these add up, right? Like, if you're constantly making small requests to change like a light bulb or a light switch, that's going to drive up your cost between materials, and you have to pay a handyman like 50 to 100 bucks to go out there. And that can jack up your expenses and decrease your NOI, decrease the value. So you want to see how they handle that. And, next, obviously, what's the property management fee? It's, from my experience, 5 to 9%, depending on the size. So, if it's like 100 units, it's around, 5%. And, my 26 units around, 7 to 8%. So, once you interview a couple of property managers, you'll get a sense of what the range is. And, next you want to ask, do you charge a leasing fee? So every year, leases renew, right? And there will be a fee, or every time a new tenant comes in, there's a fee, and it's just a fee for showing the property, a fee for doing the contract, and ranges, right? It could be 50% of the first month's rent. So if the rent's 500, they'll take 250 up front, or it just could be a flat rate that, like, for every leasing that we do, it's like $200. Me personally, this is more of a single family thing. In apartments, it's not usually a leasing fee involved. So, if they charge a leasing fee, it might be an indicator that they mostly just do single family homes. So, and then it's negotiable, right? Like, I had one property manager where I negotiated the leasing fee out of the contract, and I just kept a flat rate. And I just said, well, hey, I have 20 units, right? It's not just a single family home, it's 20 units. And I'm collecting, $10,000 a month in rent right now. So, you'll collect your 8%, which is 800. And, that's quite big, right? So, just be cognizant of what the leasing fee is. And then, do they charge a one-time setup fee to get tenants into the rental software? So, some property managers, they do $200 per tenant to build into the software, whether that's AppFolio or Buildium. And, if you collect 400 bucks in rent per unit, that's half your rent, right? And imagine I have 20 units. That's like almost like $4,000 as a one-time fee to set them up. And, like, once again, this is an indicator that they only work with single family homes, right? Like, if the single family home, rents for $2,000, 200 bucks is nothing, right? That's 10%. But, if it's an apartment complex that's like 400 bucks, that's half your rent. That's a lot of money, and that adds up, right? So, for me, I usually, if they have this, it's a key that they're single family property manager. I had my guy, he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna charge you like $5,000 to set them up. I'm like, dude, that's all my rent for that month. So, I ended up not selecting that property manager, but it's a key indicator there that, like, usually you just want a flat monthly gross rent, right? So, this is part of the business in apartments, and, property managers who do apartments, they know this. So it weeds them out for you just by asking these questions. So yeah, next you want to ask what monthly reports should I expect from you? At a minimum, you want the rent roll and the P&L. This is something that you should definitely be monitoring as the owner. I mean, real estate, it's pretty passive for the most part, but at a minimum, you got to watch the rent roll and the P&L on a monthly basis. Certainly they can give you more than just this, but at the minimum, this is what I look at. And next, you want to ask, well, how do tenants pay? And ideally in this modern day, you want electronic payments. So a common one is called pay lease. I think they just charge like a $1 fee off your rent to have auto pay through pay lease, and it sends your rent on the first of every month. So it's really nice. Like that's what my property manager uses right now. I think half the tenants are on pay lease, and then you still have some more old-fashioned tenants that will want to deposit money into the bank account. So it's just a good way to gauge how sophisticated your property manager is. And then, does the property manager also serve as a general contractor for renovations? So for me, I'm doing a heavy value add, so I did want a property manager that can also serve as general contractor to help with renovations. And they typically will charge a 5 to 10% general contracting fee. Mine does charge 5%, but they're doing a lot of work, right? Coordinating all these subcontractors and ensuring that it's done correctly, done on time, and done for the right price. So for me, I prefer having a 2-in-1, but if you have the property manager, screen them as a property manager first, and then as a general contractor second. So the number one priority is being a good property manager first, and if they're a good general contractor too, then you have a golden goose, right? So that's what my property manager is. He's a 2-in-1 package from a referral. So I lucked out. So that's why I want to scale. And then next, like how do you save me money, right? At the end of the day, they're managing the NOI. They want to collect the income and lower the expense. And how do you save me money? And they'll tell you, like, because they've done it before. If they can give you examples off the top of their head, they've done it before. So my property manager is like, we have smart locks, so that every time a tenant leaves, you don't have to change the doorknob, right? That costs $50 for changing a doorknob, versus a smart lock might be $100, but after like 2-3 tenant turnovers, it pays for itself. You just reset the lock and then get a new key. So that's one way. Or they'll just be like, oh yeah, like we buy smart door locks on Amazon. It'll save you like $30 per smart lock, and times that by 100 units, the saving adds up pretty significantly there. So it's just a good question to ask. It's vague in purpose. And then how many apartment units do you currently manage? And notice I said apartment units. You want to make sure they specialize in apartment complexes. And for me, I want medium-sized property managers of 400 to 1,000. Big enough that they have systems in place. They're too small, they don't have no systems, but not too big that you're just a number. As I mentioned, if they manage 5,000 units and you have a small little 20-unit apartment complex, they're not going to take you seriously. So you want that nice medium-sized. My property manager, they manage around 400, but they actually do renovations for 400 units. So certainly they can be much larger, but managing 400 renovations, that's quite a task there already. So, I was fortunate that I was referred a golden goose out the gate. Remember, at the end of the day, take the interview with a grain of salt. I make it clear about my expectations. But, as I mentioned, property managers are always on their best behavior and know what to say, right? So by kind of going through the interview, you can kind of weed out people and getting referrals. It helps weed out people, but, they can pass everything, be your best property manager that you interviewed, but it takes, 3 to 6 months before you can tell if the property manager is good or not. And, that's just the nature of the business. As you go in this business, you're going to come across a bad property manager. Certainly I haven't had that experience yet. I'm fortunate, but the more apartments you own, you're going to come across them. So, just take it with a grain of salt and just know that that's the nature of the business. And that's why we have a top three, right? So if the first one doesn't work out, you have number two, and you have number three. So that's how you kind of protect yourself, and just by getting educated and identifying, what the red flags are. Hopefully that will improve your success rate in finding that 1 out of 10. And the other half too is you have to be a good owner to work with, right? Because some property managers always tell me like, man, the owners yell at me, they're rude, they don't respond. So it's a two-way street. Like you have to be someone that they want to work with too, and if they know that you're very pleasant and easy to work with, then of course they would love working with you, and feel bad if they disappoint you. So it's definitely a two-way street in my opinion. So, I make it clear in your market, always have a backup property manager. It's always good to have at least two backups in every market. Because if one isn't performing, or life happens, right? I call them the three Ds, death, divorce, and disability. You need to have a backup plan. And I'd rather be prepared versus unprepared. So, I'll interview 20 property managers, and I'll rank them 1 to 3. And just start with number one, and go down my list, right? So if number one doesn't work, then go number two. Number two doesn't work, go number three. All right. So always have backups, and this will help you sleep at night, right? Knowing that worst case, you find the bad one, you have two backups. So next, start small, but think long term with your property managers. I vet all my property managers with a small property first. So, like a 20 to 30 unit apartment complex. And then, if they prove themselves, after 6 months, and they help turn this apartment complex around, and I'm able to stabilize it, finish renovations, and execute my value add strategy, then I'm looking to buy bigger apartment complexes, right? So, I might buy a 50 unit next, and guess who will be managing it? It'll be them, right? So, I make it known that, I'm starting small, and if they manage it well, I'm looking to scale and build my business along their business. So, it's a long-term partnership. And, what's nice about this is it gives them an incentive to try harder with your property, even if you're a smaller client. Like I said, they could be managing 1,000 units, and you only have 20 units, but I just make it known, hey, like I'm your smallest client now, but I'm looking to buy a 50 unit, then a 100 unit, and at that point, you might be one of their largest clients. So just make it known, and property managers are a great source of off-market deals, and they're typically brokers as well. And when someone wants to sell, or if the property's not doing well, and the owner's being cheap, the property manager, their hands are tied, right? At the end of the day, they have to listen to the owner's request, but they'll see that like the property's not doing well, right? And then they'll start to pitch it, say, hey, we noticed that you're not making any repairs, but we might have an interested buyer who's another investor that we manage his apartment complex, and they can be your ears and eyes and gain those off-market deals. And once it's off market, it's very reasonable, right? So it's very easy, because you don't have to do a transition. That they're already managing it. The owners are just being cheap. So when you take over, they'll tell you exactly what needs to be repaired, so you can be proactive and have that funds ready. So this is a way to get like free off-market deals without spending any money on mailers. So, I make it known to them, like, hey, like if any of your other apartments that you're managing, if they want to sell, keep me in mind, right? So they're always the first to know if another owner wants to sell because they're managing it, and they may want to sell it for a small broker fee, which is fine, right? 3%, but I'm happy to pay a 3% fee if they bring me a good deal that has potential. And you're paying for the convenience too, right? So you're paying because you don't have to pay for a marketing budget, and you don't have to pay to deal with the headache of a transition because they're already managing it. So it's just kind of a thing that I do, and I make it known to everyone I work with, like even with the contractor, hey, if you know somebody that wants to sell their apartment complex that needs renovations, then if you bring it to me, then I'll use you to renovate that apartment complex. So that's how you build business and scale together, right? You want to align the incentives, and they'll want to bring you deals, and that's the ultimate goal. So, once again, to beat a dead horse, make it known to your property manager that you want more deals. They're your boots in the ground. They're going to bring you off-market deals that they're already managing. They may be managing 1,000 units, and maybe some owner of a 50 unit wants to sell. And if the property manager likes you and like working with you, who do you think they're going to bring the deal to first, right? It's definitely going to be yourself. And then, you have to worry about the transition and doing that weird 2 week gap where you're transitioning property managers. And then the property manager will continue to retain oversight of the property and still collect their monthly their fee, right? So, it's a win-win situation, and that's how you want to think, right? It's a win for me because they brought me an off-market deal. It's a win for me because they can tell me what's good and what's bad about the property. It's a win for me because I'm able to scale now, right? Like it's pretty passive. I just need to come up with the down payment and the renovation costs, and it's a win for the property manager because they like working with me. It makes their life easier, and a win because they still retain oversight of the property and still collect that 7 to 8% property management fee. So they don't lose units under management. So it's definitely a win-win, and I always throw it out there. When I interview them, that's kind of my strategy. So once again, great property managers know great contractors. If you listen to Bigger Pockets, rock stars know rock stars. So if you have a great property manager, they can refer you a great contractor, great title insurance company, great realtors, great everything, right? They surround themselves with the best of the best. And that's what you do, right? As you start to scale, you want to make sure your referrals are good because your name's on the line, right? If I refer you somebody, I'm putting my name on the line. And people ask me, well, how do I choose which market to invest in? I'll go to any market. I don't care which market, as long as I have a good property manager there. And, obviously you have to have good job growth and population growth and all that stuff. But, if they're good and they're golden goose, I'll go there and invest in that market. So that's what's key about having a very strong property manager on your team.